Hello, and welcome to the TOK broadcast. Right now, we are going to go over the 5 basic senses which we use to perceive the world around us. We use sight, hearing, smell, touch, and taste to better our perception. We can also use them by connecting a memory by a certain sense. For example, the smell of a certain food might remind you of something in your childhood. This here will go over smell. She has also managed to get an interview with Sarah Koska.
One sense of scent is actually very interesting. First off, before anything, we should know how we smell. Odor molecules in the air are dissolved into the mucus in our nose. Specialized receptors, or olfactory receptor neurons, detect the odor. Then, the neurons transmit info to the bulbs in the back of our head. The bulbs transmit it to our brain. And finally, the brain receives the info and accesses stored information and memories we have. The sense of smell is 10,000 times more sensitive than any of the other senses, and the recognition is immediate. These scents can trigger memories and can trigger emotion. The way scent is affected by perception and vice versa is very interesting. Smells are perceived differently by everyone. Fish fries and hot cocoa may be great for campers, but bad for someone with a stomach flu. Good associations and bad ones can come from the same scent, but with different people. Such as like a campfire. One may really like it because they have memories with their family as a kid. Someone else may not like it because they imagine their house burning down. One's expectations and beliefs affect olfactory fatigue, which is the ability to get used to one smell. So like if you walk into your house and you don't smell anything, your friend who doesn't come over often may think your house smells like coconuts and you don't smell it. For example, adapting to an odor is significantly different when people believe that the odor is hazardous. So if you're going to walk into a restaurant and they're like, oh my gosh, there is an awful onion smell and it is going to burn your nose, you're going to have a lot harder time getting used to that scent than someone who didn't have, any idea of that. Scent is a very fragile sense. Things like polyps or growths in the nose, dental problems, hormonal disturbances, sinus infections, common colds can all affect and damage it. These smells, they alert us to danger, to things like fire or smoke or gas, or they can stop us from ingesting bad, gross food, and they help us avoid dangerous areas, all because of our nose. So I'm here with Agnieszka Sorokowska, a scientist, and I'm going to ask her some questions about a recent study she did. Hi, welcome. Can you tell me what you were trying to discover with this study? Well, we were trying to get a hint of an individual's personality through his or her scent alone. How did you and your team go about doing this? 30 men and 30 women wore white cotton shirts for 3 nights. They could not use fragrance, deodorants, soaps, and could not smoke or drink or eat odorous foods during the day. They also took a personality test. How did you analyze the data you got? These shirts were collected and placed in opaque plastic bags. Then 100 men volunteers and 100 women were asked to smell the shirts and evaluate 5 personality traits of the donors on a scale of 1 to 10. So things like dominance or social or introvert, things like that. Wow, that's really interesting. How did the judges' answers match up with the actual personalities of the people? The matches were far from perfect. The judgments of dominance were the most accurate when the judge assessed the shirt of the opposite sex. That's interesting. Smell's a strong factor when deciding one's mate, apparently. Indeed, but more studies would need to be done to confirm the results. Thank you for your time. So, in conclusion, we know how people act based on the smell they give off. Extroversion and neuroticism and dominance may be expressed through emotions and the results of them coming out of things like your armpits. People who are neurotic may sweat more when under stress. Then the body modifies the bacteria under your arms and it smells differently. People in high dominance may have higher testosterone, which modifies their sweat glands. So, basically, to sum this all up, smell is powerful, the most powerful sense. One's memories, beliefs, expectations, perceptions affect how they smell specific scents, like marshmallows or coconut or armpit. We can know how people act based purely on their scent.
Did you use your headphones for too long when you were a teenager? Did you always have it on full blast? Do you have problems hearing the radio now? Maybe you should look into having a hearing aid. Do you have problems hearing your kids talk or maybe your grandkids laugh? Maybe a hearing aid will be right for you.
Thanks for the insight. Now we'll learn about the visual senses from Celine about the advantages of visual learning.
One of the most common ways of learning things, if not the most common way of learning, is visual learning. This is when you learn through your sight. One of the most important moments when you learn through your sight is when you're a small child. At this age, you are so young, it really is vital to be able to see. When you are that young, you don't know a lot. You don't know much about the world around you and you don't understand it. So being able to see becomes a guide for you. It can start from the first time you saw a color or even a face. You start recognizing the things around you. You start to recognize the faces of the people who are around you. You can tell your mother apart from your father apart from your aunt, and so forth. You might not know the names of the colors, but you can start to tell them apart. You can tell that an elephant is gray and a dog is brown or white or whatever color it is, despite the fact that you don't know what any of those colors are or even what an elephant and a dog are. You also use your sight to be able to get around. When you crawl, you know not to crawl into a table, and you eventually pull yourself up to sit in a chair because at some point you saw an adult do it, and that image of, oh, that's where I'm supposed to sit, stayed in your mind. When you are older, you start to use it for other things like reading. When you read, you start out by seeing the letters and the sounds that come out of it. In fact, many of the products sold to teach young children how to read consist of showing the word that they want the child to know and then showing the image. So instead of just saying elephant, you would see the picture of an elephant and the word. And because that image is saved in your head with the word, you relate them, and every time you see the word elephant, you think of an elephant. It is very effective when it comes to reading. Eventually, you can read a whole story and make this whole image in your head of what it would look like just because you see these letters put together and because you learned what these letters mean through seeing, you can make a story in your head. These are obviously all things that you use throughout your whole life. When you look around the room, you see depth. You can see two walls meeting. You can tell that they're meeting in an angle. You can also start to see how far away things are from you. You can tell if all you need to do is reach across the table to grab a cup, or if you need to get up and walk across the room, because you can visually measure the distance and you can tell that, oh, if I reach for it, I'm not going to be able to reach that cup. Seeing is a sight that we've needed for many, many years since we ever existed. So common that not even just humans use it. Animals use it a lot too. A bird had to learn at what angle it had to fly when it saw a mouse on the field. A squirrel needed to learn what kind of food it was able to eat so that it could take it and not starve the same way every other person does. You also learn how to detect things that are dangerous to you by seeing. You can tell predators or sharp things apart, and you can tell that that's dangerous and that's what you should stay away from. It has allowed us to survive for many years. Even when you are no longer able to see, you can still see in your mind. When a person has gone blind, but they were originally able to see, they still imagine what it looked like in their head. If they were to touch a table, in their head, they see what that table would look like. they learned how the table looks, they have that image already saved of what a common table looks like. So when they touch one or are told that there is a table, in their head they already have the image of that table or any other object or thing in front of them. The only reason we've been able to survive is because we've learned things throughout the way. And one of the biggest ways we've learned has been through seeing. It is very vital to humans, and it is definitely a very important way of learning things. Visually learning is very important to all humans.
Are you visually impaired? Are you having trouble seeing what's directly in front of you? Stop down to Vision Optical and get your eyes checked and get yourself a new pair of snazzy glasses. Whether you want to look like Jeffrey Dahmer or a hipster, coming down to Vision Optical will help you out.
Okay. Now we'll hear about the gustatory senses, or in layman's terms, sense of taste. Here we'll get a basic overview.
Your gustatory sense is better known as your sense of taste. There are small receptors towards the back of your tongue, otherwise known as taste buds, that give you your sensation of taste. People with a regulated sense of taste will have little difficulty tolerating a wide array of taste sensations, so they can better adapt to things like new tastes. Gustatory defensiveness is a type of sensation that has to do with not enjoying new tastes, and you don't enjoy trying new food. Certain flavors to a person are unbearable. A person might have a hard time tolerating either sweet, sour, salty, or spicy, and they only get pleasure in some foods that they eat. Taste sensitivities with this defensiveness also restrict a person's diet. Another disorder is gustatory underresponsiveness. That is a difficulty enjoying full variety of foods. A person might be able to eat anything that they want, but they won't be able to taste it the ways that others can. So you can be eating a plate of spaghetti, and one person will be able to taste it the way anybody tastes it, but then another person will have the same plate of spaghetti and they taste something completely different. They also may not be able to be alerted if they eat something harmful. So if they find a berry and they eat it, it could be a poisonous berry, but they won't actually know the harmful effects until something actually happens to them. And there's another thing tied in with your gustatory senses. That is a gustatory seeking. That is when a person is constantly in search of an oral input, so they are looking for certain flavors, whether that be something sweet, sour, spicy, or salty. They will tend to, a person with gustatory seeking will also tend to grind and clench their teeth, which is not healthy for a person. They will seek out certain textures as well as flavors in their food as well. And another symptom of gustatory seeking is a person will be eating when they're supposed to be focused on their work or whatever they're doing. It provides them with an organizing sensation and lengthy attention spans, so they better stay paying attention to what they're supposed to, and they are very, very organized with their work. There's also gustatory discrimination disorder, where people have hard times distinguishing between their flavors, so they won't know if like chocolate or vanilla. They won't be able to tell the difference between them. Everything is just a big blend of flavors to them. They will also have a hard time determining if food is warm or cold. They don't know if it's at the right temperature, so they won't know if milk is okay if it's warm or cold. And they also have a hard time distinguishing if the food is bad for them, so they won't be able to taste sour milk or rotten meat. They also have a hard time describing taste, so they won't be able to tell you the taste of chocolate or whatever. Also, during a woman's pregnancy, their gustatory sense changes. They have a higher gustatory threshold on average, so they have a different tolerance of food taste than a person who is not pregnant. And in a study has found that there's a decrease in gustatory functions during their first trimester. They believe that it is due to notable changes in the secretion of hormones, so they have a different level of gustatory functions throughout their entire pregnancy. Those are all different things that affect our taste, but there are also things that affect our perception of taste. Mood is one of them. The brain initiates our taste. There are different tastes that our brain acknowledges when we have different moods. Like if you're anxious or depressed, there's this taste that you really don't taste it, kind of tastes bland and something that you don't like. With being stressed, your brain initiates the taste of like sugars and carb-based foods to increase the levels of serotonin in our brain, so you kind of crave those more. Also, another one is aging. After time, taste buds wear out and they disappear from the sides and the roof of our mouth. The remaining taste buds also become less sensitive, and along with that, our ability to smell decreases. So, by the age of 60, most people have lost about half their taste buds. So by then, you will definitely have a decreased sense of taste. Next, we'll hear about the sense of touch and how we learn through it with Kalina.
As many of you know, the largest organ is the skin. Today I'll be discussing the cutaneous sense, or touch, and learning through it. Did you know that there are multiple receptors in our skin? The first one is the mechanoreceptors, which feel the indentations in skin. Then we have the thermoreceptors, which respond to temperature changes, and the neoreceptors, which respond to damaging stimuli. The functions of the touch are vibration, surface texture, wetness and dryness, surface temperature, shape, slope, curves, hardness and softness, weight, elasticity, and pliability. You can learn a lot of different things by experimenting with how you touch, and normally it only applies to babies and blind or deaf people. Because if you touch a cat, the difference of information from placing your hand on the cat and moving your hand is very different. If you just place your hand on the cat without moving it, you'll feel the warmth and the softness or how hard it is. And then maybe sometimes it'll purr and you'll feel that too. But if you move your hand, you'll be able to feel the fur, tail, legs, whiskers, eyes, ears, an idea of the weight, size, and shape. It's very important that babies learn how to explore with this. Normally when they can't move, they explore first with their mouth and feet, but as their motor and vision skills develop and they start to develop more strategies towards it, they learn how to reach and grasp, bang on things, bat things, put them together, and take them apart. So that's why you see on commercials a lot of different toys corresponding with these things. There are actually steps that you could take to develop hand function for your child. So the first would be to honor your child's hands. So you don't want to grab them too much or they'll get overwhelmed. Also, you want to observe what they do and make note of these things that you know what to work on. Another is to give the child these toys, these objects to encourage the development, and definitely to play hand games, like tickling each other or things like that. With deaf and blind people, it's very obvious that when a blind person is walking around, they only have really their touch to feel someone or something. They use a stick to find out where they are in relation to themselves. And that's why touch is so important to learning things based on our bodies and how sensitive we really are.
And next, we will hear about the auditory perception, the ability to perceive and understand sounds.
What is your sense of hearing? Well, if you're listening to this, then you have the ability to hear. If you're not, well, then you might be deaf. Hearing is the ability to perceive sound by detecting vibrations and changes in the pressure of the surrounding medium through time. So you hear through your ear, and there are three parts of your ear consistent of the middle, the outer, and the inner ear. The outer ear is what you can actually see. The auditory canal and the eardrum. The eardrum is an airtight flap of skin, and sound travels in waves, and when they hit your eardrum, it causes them to vibrate at a certain rate in accordance with its frequency. So that way you're able to hear. Let's say you're underwater and somebody is talking to you. Probably won't be able to hear them because underwater, the water stops and reduces your hearing. Fish, however, because they live underwater, have a more specialized hearing apparatus, and they are able to hear underneath the water. Animals have much better sense of hearing, but not all sounds are normally audible to them. Each animal has a specific range for both loudness and pitch, so they can communicate with each other and they know if they're in any danger. Knowing what hearing is pretty kind of obvious because everybody knows what your five basic senses are, and if they don't, they are learned throughout the years. But there are different problems that can go wrong with hearing. Hearing loss or hearing impairment is one of them. It happens when there are problems in one or more parts of your ear or ears, and someone with hearing loss might not be able to hear some sounds, or they may be completely deaf. About 3 in 1,000 babies are born with hearing impairment, making it the most common birth defect, and hearing problems can also develop later in life. A few different types of hearing loss are conductive hearing loss, which happens when there is a problem in the outer or middle ear. Most kids with conductive hearing loss have a middle hearing loss, and it's usually temporary because most cases can be medically treated. Sensory hearing loss is another, and this happens when the cochlea is not working correctly because the tiny hair cells are damaged or destroyed. Depending on the loss, a person might hear most sounds, hear in quiet, but not in noise, so maybe if somebody's whispering, they'd be able to hear you. But if you're talking with a normal voice, probably won't hear somebody. Only hear some sounds, or hear no sounds at all, so they might be completely deaf or just partially deaf. Neural hearing loss happens when there is a problem with the connection from the cochlea to the brain. So maybe a nerve is damaged or something. And central hearing loss is what happens when the cochlea is working properly, but parts of the brain is not. So maybe there's a section in your brain that got damaged or something, and you no longer have the ability to hear things. And it is very, very difficult to treat. Hearing loss can come at any point in time. Most people, if they're born with a defect, it's usually because parts of their ears were not formed correctly, or they didn't work well to begin with. Other problems can happen later in life because of injury or illness. Some of the injuries can include middle ear fluid, so maybe you're swimming and you get water stuck in your ear and you can't get it out. That can damage your ear. Serious infections can also affect that, and head injuries. Very loud music, especially through headphones, can also cause hearing loss, and repeated exposure to loud sounds such as machinery in a factory can also contribute to hearing loss. Kids that also have lots of ear infections can also lead to hearing loss. It's probably temporary, but it can be permanent if you're not treated. Here are a few more. Heredity can also be a very good possibility of being deaf. If you have a gene for deafness, you may be passing it on to your children. Trauma can also cause it, so again, head injuries. Certain medicines can cause hearing loss, and aging. Aging is really big because you've been hearing your entire life.
So, in conclusion, it is the five basic senses that allows one to experience the world. Mechanics behind it are more complex than one would think. It starts from our early development when we learn from touch. It then expands with the other senses. As living creatures, it is with our senses that we survive. Many things could deteriorate or develop into a disorder. Either way, appreciate it. Thank you for listening to the segments. We hope that you learned many things from it.